Hello, everyone. Hello, friends, family, couples. I'm Jessie with RDJ Rocks, and today we are in the mix with Lori from Arthur's Catering and Rudy and Marta Photography. Thank you guys so much for
Hello.
joining me.
Yes,
Thanks for
thank you
having
for
us.
having us.
I'm really excited because tonight I'm going to pick their brains about everything wedding day, wedding operations, reception, the, ever daunting timeline. So we're going to go over all that stuff and hopefully you get a bunch of good wedding planning tools. I'm going to start with Lori. Tell us a little bit about your services, your style. What is the couple's experience like when they work with you?
Yeah, so my experience, I'm at Casa Feliz with Arthur's Catering. So I do it a little bit differently, but Arthur's in general, I mean, you'll have an amazing experience. Typically, the way we do it is we try to gather as much information as possible with what the couple likes, dislikes is always helpful too, and kind of go from there, especially when it comes to the food, maybe what their favorite food is, what their favorite restaurant, kind of get the idea going. What they didn't like at certain weddings helps as well, since a lot of people have typically gone to some in the before already, and then kind of get that idea of how we can create their menu specifically for them.
I love that. So so Arthur's comes included with Casa Feliz. Is that,
Exactly.
am I correct in saying that?
We're exclusive. So we're the only caterer at Casa Feliz.
But they will still get their menu customized and tailored to their taste, is what I'm understanding.
Yes, so we did make packages to make it a little bit easier. Arthur's being in business for over 30 years, has a vast menu, so sometimes it can be a little much to look at first. So we made specific packages to kind of help guide them, whether they're thinking plated or buffet, and to kind of go from there so that they can have a good starting off point, especially when you're talking to tons of vendors and starting the process. There's a lot of info you get in the beginning.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. So you help them kind of dial it back. I love it.
Exactly.
And yes, in case anybody missed that, Arthur's has been in business for 30 years. So super reputable. They definitely know what they're doing.
Just a few times.
Rudy, tell us a little bit about you and Marta and what you guys do, your style.
Sure, definitely. So I am Rudy from Rudy Marta Photography. My wife is downstairs with our 4-year-old son. But our style, we are a husband and wife photography duo. Our style, whenever anybody asks us that, we always say that we are candid more than anything else. We try to strive more than anything else to be comfortable. When Marta and I got married, our photographer was very in your face, turn to this angle, do this, do that, and very controlling. And it was just so awkward because I'd never met the guy. And as I'm getting ready, some random dude just pops up in my room that I'm getting ready in. As I'm like pulling on my pants and is just like, "Hey, what's up, man? I'm your photographer." And I'm just like, hold on, man, let me zip up my zipper. Like, give me a second. It was like super awkward. And, when we started the business, our whole idea was that's the last thing that we want. We don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable with us. So our style is candid. We always want to make sure that you feel comfortable around us, and personalities meshing well is also really important to us because we want to make sure that not only you and your future spouse, but also your family and everybody that's there is like, "Oh yeah, Rudy, yeah, dude, I know exactly who that is." And they have a wonderful experience with us. And at the end of the day, I'm the guy that goes ahead and gives grandma a hug and mom a hug. And I'm just like, "Hey, congratulations. Your family just got a little bit bigger." And that's like our philosophy towards everything. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. In brides who are planning your wedding, if you didn't already know, I think your photographer might be one of the most intimate vendors that you'll probably choose. They're going to spend all day with you and they're going to see you when you are still zipping up your pants. So definitely choose somebody you're comfortable with, like you said. Lori, tell us a little bit about what comes with your usual package. What do you see couples booking the most often?
Yeah, I mean, some of it depends on the couple, whether they're thinking plated versus buffet. But especially in the Casa Feliz world, you do get either option as well as your tables, your chairs, your linen. We include the flatware and the china. So they have choices to choose from that are in our warehouse as well. So we try to make it as much of a one-stop shop as possible when it comes to the catering aspect, so they don't have to worry too much about, oh, I need to rent this, I need to rent that, because a lot of vendors isn't always the best idea, but we love working with our vendors as well. So if they have certain items that they need that we don't have, we can always help them get it or refer.
I love that. Is there a most popular dish? I'm springing this question on you. Is there like a most popular, like fan favorite dish?
I mean, it depends on the person, but definitely our top popular ones, I would say vegetarian wise, is the eggplant involtini. I get a lot of vendors that are even like, I need this dish. And then my personal favorite is the chicken manchego. Oh my gosh, the sauce on that with the prosciutto in it and the breadcrumbs, all of it. I want all of it.
Yum. I need to come hang out with you guys more often.
It's a good and bad thing to be surrounded by food all the time.
I love it. Rudy, what about you guys? What does your usual package look like, and what do your couples book the most?
So we always say that we don't want to oversell you. So I always, like, during like our consult and everything, we go through like a faux timeline, and we kind of go through everything and kind of start from the ceremony and work forward and backwards. And then from there, we kind of like formulate everything. For the most part, the most popular thing is our 8-hour Serenity collection. And that one, it's Marta and myself. We don't have associates or anything like that. And then we have what's called a together session. And that's just because like you can use it as an engagement session, but some of our couples, they live out of state and they fly in or they fly us out, whichever one it may be. And when it comes to that, sometimes you just don't meet face to face until a week or two before the wedding date, or you just don't have the time for an engagement session. So we also offer a 1-year anniversary session or a day after session. So let's say you get married and you're like, you know what, like I would really love to have like our a session in downtown Orlando or in Celebration or in Winter Park, like places like that. And that way you don't have the stress of the wedding day. You don't have the rush of like our 45-minute portrait session, our portrait session on the wedding day. And it just feels way more comfortable. And we get to know each other and stuff like that. Obviously everything comes with an online gallery, with a print release, so you can download the images and print them wherever you want. But you also have the ability to purchase prints from the gallery if you want to. Or design an album, things like that. Like Marta's graphic design background is the first thing that comes to mind whenever I talk about albums, because I did not go to school for that. All the pretty stuff that you see on our website, that's all Marta. 100% my wife's work, not my own. They have
a very cool website. They have a cute little video graphic of the two of them. It's very cool.
Yeah, that's all her. It's all her. But yeah, that's our typical most popular package. But I always try to find out what it is specifically that you need. A lot of couples, sometimes they think about, what fits them. And we always try to adjust and figure out how we can go ahead and give them exactly what they want.
I love that. I love the together session because, that was my situation. I didn't really need an engagement shoot. I had a family friend take some pictures and that was like enough for us. But a year later, I put back on the dress, did an anniversary shoot, and I almost had more fun taking those pictures because it was stress-free, like no rushing to enter the reception. I didn't really care if my hair got messed up. Like we had a good time. So that's a very cool idea for brides and grooms and grooms and grooms and brides out there, to either do a session the day after or a year later. It's really fun. And then you get more photos in your very fancy outfits that you took a long time to pick. So I love that. So Lori, what information do you need from couples and how do you guys collect it?
Yeah, so typically with the Casa Feliz world, the main thing is the guest count. Casa being a historic home, we can only fit up to 120 people. So sometimes that's the first question, just to make sure we're within their guest count size. And then in the catering world, it's checking what their budget might be as well as what their needs might be. If they're thinking that plated package versus that buffet package, if food is even a high priority on their list. Some people food might not be their highest option. Some people, food is the end all be all. So kind of figuring out what they like, what they prefer, and going from there and making that connection with them and kind of becoming part of the family, kind of like they said as well. I feel like a lot of vendors, you kind of have that way of connecting with clients. And typically email first or phone call, either one. And then usually with the costly side is a tour, because of course everyone wants to see the building. So usually the tour is when we make that first connection in person.
I was going to say, how many times do you usually meet with one couple? Because I mean, there's the tour and maybe a tasting. Does that all happen at the tour or does it happen later?
Typically the tasting would be later. We try to do that a few months prior, just so it's fresh in their mind of what they're thinking for their food. But usually I would say probably about 3 times we would meet with them. Usually the tour and then the 2 to 3 months prior, and we'll do their details meeting, try to at the same time go over their diagram, what linens they want, picking that kind of stuff out. And then if they need another one, then we will.
That's so interesting. We only meet with our couples, I mean, usually when they are trying to decide if they want to book us, and then about 30 days out from the wedding. What about you, Rudy? How often do you meet with your couples?
On average, it's normally like maybe once or twice. I'm a big believer that, I communicate through text the majority of the time. So I'm always available to talk to them, but I'm always like, let's hop on a phone, let's Skype, let's meet in person, Zoom, whatever. Just so that we can have that connection, because you can't really get that natural human inflection through text. I'm like, I would rather see how we vibe, and if it's cool and it's just like afterwards we can go grab a beer or a glass of wine, then totally let's go ahead and go.
All about the vibes. all about the vibes.
100%, because it's like you said, I'm gonna watch you, put up your zipper. Like I want to make sure that we're cool. But no, I'm always about being available as well, because I've been to hundreds of weddings. This is your only one that you're going to go to where you're the center of attention. I want to make sure that if you have questions, I can help you. I can guide you. I'm not a planner. I'm not a coordinator, but I've been to a few weddings. I know a couple things,
And what about as far as what information you need from the couple, and like, how do you collect that? I mean, my first guess is you need a shot list, right? How do you get that from your couple?
So for us, everything's done digitally through a client portal. We send a couple of questionnaires throughout the planning process just to kind of learn more about who they are as a couple. I've always felt that like learning a little bit about the ins and outs, why you got to this point in your relationship, what led up to that. What are your plans after you get married? What's your honeymoon? Things like that. Just to get a little bit more of a personal touch. Yes, we do ask for a shot list. I think that a shot list is important just to save time more than anything else. And the only shot list that we really ask for is for those formals. Once you get married, once the ceremony's said and done, everybody's going to bum rush you and congratulate you, hug you, cry with you, everything. And there's going to be a whirlwind of emotions. But at the end of the day, there's only so much time. So I ask I'm going to be honest, it's Marta. Marta goes ahead and sends the questionnaire roughly about 6 to 8 weeks before the wedding. And we ask, who's on the list? And then are there any parents that have been divorced that don't play nice? Because again, I'm looking and seeking that level of comfort. I want to make sure that this is as stressless as possible. So if your parents don't play well after being divorced or separated, then let me know, and I'll go ahead and I'll make sure that they aren't in any specific formation together. So again, I'm looking for ease of use in regards to the formals. I want to make sure that everything goes smoothly, easy for everyone. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Oh man, I'm really excited to ask more questions later. I can't wait to get into the timeline part, because I know the shot list has a lot to do with like how the timeline for the whole day will go. So I'm going to hold on to my questions, but if anybody's watching, stay tuned because there's going to be more good stuff. Lori, my next question for you is, tell me about the most memorable wedding you've done. If it's been funny, good, bad, interesting, tell us what is your most vivid wedding memory.
I kind of just thought of things that have happened at weddings that made me laugh or that I loved. One time I had a Justin Timberlake impersonator, which I was all about that.
Oh my gosh.
He like
They love
performed, he
that.
had like the hat on, like all of it. It was awesome.
Oh my gosh,
I
I
guess
love
the
that.
bride was a huge fan, and so that was the groom's gift to her. So I thought that was really fun.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Rudy, what about you?
So I thought about it because I'm just like, man, there's been so many things, and like I just wanted to like talk about an adventure that we had, and it was an elopement in Positano that we had, and this couple, it was kind of like an awe moment. They went ahead and they flew us out there, and we were there over the summer, and we met up with them at their hotel. But when we met up with them, they told us, guys, we need like a few minutes. And this entire time, it's just the four of us. It's myself, Marta, Josh, and Caitlin. And they go out onto the balcony. They spend 5 minutes, and they come back in, and like they're just like tears are like in their eyes. They had actually read their vows themselves because there wasn't an officiant or anything like that, and just said, "All right, guys, we can go and we can shoot now." And it was just like such a like sweet, like intimate moment. And like after that, we walked around Positano. It was so hot. We went to like a wine bar and like had some gelato and stuff like that. And then once the sun set behind the mountains, that's when we actually started shooting and stuff like that. But it's just, I wanted to talk about that because it is an opportunity for brides to have that elopement, because a couple of months later, they had a celebration at the Orlando Science Center where they actually had a celebration and a reception where everybody got together, all their family flew in and things like that. And it just, I don't know, it was cool seeing them again, seeing all their friends and just partying it up. It was good times.
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of scared of that word. If my parents are watching, they'll probably get mad at me, but I don't think it's a bad idea at all to go do something just the two of you and then do the big celebration so you can take it all in. It's the same thing as the year later when I did my anniversary photos. That almost felt, because it was just the two of us and my photographer. And then it's intimate and you can be just a little bit more present in the moment without your whole family crowding you. That's very cool. Okay, Lori, what should couples be asking in a consultation when they are looking for a caterer?
Yeah, a lot of times we include quite a lot, but that might not always be the case. So asking what is fully included, if there are any fees, because a lot of venues, like ones that we're at, there is a service charge. We're very upfront about it, but it is there. So we make sure to tell them. We don't want anyone to be caught off guard by any means. So we're pretty upfront with all of that. But even sales tax is sometimes something that people forget to add on, which can add up. But certain things like that, just like what fees might be there, what's fully included. A lot of times I have couples ask me, what am I forgetting? Just because they're not sure what to ask, which I totally get. You're doing this for the first time for most people. So it's not your typical questions that you would ask. So just kind of making sure you're getting what you're paying for is always a good starting off point.
Yeah, there's actually so much that a caterer, depending on what you get with them, obviously would be providing for your wedding that you probably aren't even thinking about. Like, I'm guessing you guys do like chargers and like place settings and help with stuff like that?
Yeah, we definitely can. We don't own chargers, but we own the china, and we have 4 or 5 different types. We own the flatware. Those are the small things that they don't think about that they will be picking. But same with the linen. With Casa, we include it. So they have over 40 different colors to choose from. So that's the stuff I usually do with them in that 2 to 3 months out details meeting, just because we have a little bit more that we do have them pick.
Yeah.
So we do have a full sit down where we can kind of go through it all, because it's another one of those things that could be a little overwhelming when you see tons of colors and you're just like, which one do I choose?
There's a lot more to pick out than you go in expecting. You're like, I'm just going to taste some good food. And then you're like, oh man, I have to think about the whole color scheme and layout for the entire reception space.
We just get you nice and full first.
And that way you're tired and you're like, pick the purple one. I'm pretty sure that's how mine went. Okay, so whoever wants to answer first, this question is kind of for both of you. But tell me, at what points in the evening does the caterer and the photographer kind of have to collaborate the most?
Rudy, you can go.
Okay. So I thought about this because the times that I've worked with you all, like there's two things that always stand out to me, and that's the flaming donuts and the s'mores bar. I freaking love them. It's
Love
like
it.
it's like such an amazing experience. For those that are watching, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to their website. I'm
I
sure
don't
they have
know.
pictures.
What?
You don't know what they are?
No.
Okay.
Oh my
So
gosh.
dang, I don't have
Would you like
anything.
me to
Okay.
explain it?
It's okay.
Okay.
We'll direct people
So
to their website. I'll go
Pretend
look.
that this is a saucepan
Okay, there we go.
and there's donuts and
Donut
like
holes,
it's caramelizing and flaming up. Like it is beautiful. It is so like it's amazing to photograph because everything caramelizes and you see like the sugar like going up and the flame. It's beautiful to photograph. So every time I see it set up, I'm like, hey, just let me know when you're actually like caramelizing stuff so that I can photograph it because it is
That's
beautiful.
the first thing that came to mind of collaboration was the donuts.
Oh yeah.
I know.
Oh yeah.
It's the first thought. I'm all
Listen,
about that.
I'm a fat boy at heart. I'll be 100% honest with that. It's so good, so good. But on top of that, like I feel like one of the things is that I like photographing the hors d'oeuvres that are being passed around during cocktail hour. I love to get that before the guests devour it. So I always like to look at it and I'm just like, everything's perfectly placed. Everything looks elegant. Let me photograph this. I like to photograph a lot of if you have like a dessert station or anything like that. Again, we're talking about the s'mores and things like that. And then if there's ever like a plate setting or anything like that, I look at that as well because the food, like when it's photographed beautifully, it sells itself. Without tasting it, obviously. But no, that's what I look at. And I always try to make sure that, you know, when the food hits the table, we're there as well, just so that we can be like, okay, all right, everybody's eating. Okay, let's go eat ourselves. And, you know, we want to make sure that everything's on point and everything goes cohesively. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And like pro tip for couples out there, if you are not going to your cocktail hour and you're instead taking photos, you're definitely going to want pictures because you're not even going to know what was going on. I'm like, I don't even know what that room looked like. I hope it looked pretty.
Definitely.
Yeah, we do try to always put some hors d'oeuvres on their table for them because typically they are taking pictures most of the time. We try to sneak them some food, but usually they're like, no.
Oh yeah, you'll get to eat, just not like where everybody else is eating.
And the flaming donuts, by the way, if anyone wants to get them, we're actually delivering them because we're doing Arthur's delivery right now to kind of keep up with the times of what's happening. So you can actually order them and make them at home if you wanted.
Why did you tell me that?
I know.
Like I'm sitting here and I was like, I gotta get rid of my quarantine bod. Like, come on.
Next up, cooking flaming donuts with RDJ Rock.
Seriously.
I brought some home and done it. That would have been fun.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so I have a few questions on here because I know that Casa Feliz is definitely a unique venue as far as the timeline goes and like dinner and dancing. And from the DJ's perspective, and I know this like happened at my wedding, was I was going to enter the reception room late. But at that point, it was like the later I enter my reception, we were going to have to rearrange first dances because then like steaks were getting cold. Like, have you guys ever run into that where you've had to now rearrange a timeline because maybe like you had to accommodate for food, or like at Casa, does that not happen because it's different? I'm springing this question on you.
No, you're fine. I mean, not really have to accommodate it, but definitely that's actually funny. That was one of the things that I said for constant communication with the photographer because my queuing from cocktail hour to doing intros is kind of my chef's cue of when to start getting ready for dinner, whether it's plating certain things or getting things ready in the chafers. So that is a big factor, but that's why I like to communicate with the photographer and be like, hey, are we good? 5 more minutes of pictures. Let's make sure they're the last ones right in. So that is one thing that we do like to make sure to check with them on, because obviously we want to make sure they get the pictures and we want to make sure the food doesn't suffer. So we just like to be in communication as much as possible with the vendors because everyone's got their list of what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's good for like couples to hear, because I don't think they realize like what us as vendors go through to initiate this kind of sequence of events to make it all run smooth, right?
Magically happens.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's one of I used to work in food and beverage, and like one of the things is that like when the food is done, it's done. You got to get it out.
Yeah.
And if it dies, and then it just kind of just doesn't, it isn't as good and as fresh as it could be. So I always try to like abide by the timeline that's given to me by either, you know, the wedding coordinator, wedding planner, whoever it may be, just so that like we get that food out like as ASAP as possible.
Yeah. I remember it was actually Kristen who ran up to me at my wedding. She was the DJ for my wedding. And she was like, as the bride, I was fixing my hair. It wasn't my photographer's fault. I was fixing my hair and makeup, and I was taking my own sweet time. And she's like, you need to enter now. Otherwise we have to rearrange things because steaks are going to get cold. And as the bride, I was like, I don't care about the steaks. Like, you're in the zone where like, I'm glad my vendors cared, because I was obviously not in the capacity to care about it. So I'm glad they were taking care of me and my guests.
That's what we're there for. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so let's dive into the wedding timeline. What should the process be for a couple to start thinking about their wedding timeline? Where do they start? I'm wondering if you two are going to have different answers.
Well, the first thing I thought of was just checking your contracts and the times, because I've actually had a lot of people, not a lot, but a few people that put maybe a different ceremony time because they wanted to change it for sunset, but then they didn't relay that information to like all the vendors or something like that. Or the photographer might not stay the whole time. Like their 8 hours, if that's their package, might have been starting earlier. So we need to make sure cake cutting's done by this time, or, you know, certain things like that. So I think like the first thing I would do is check your contracts and check your times of all your vendors. So you make sure you've got them all covered of like when this needs to happen then. Yeah.
Rudy, what about you? And I mean, for you, the timeline even starts, I mean, it's probably starts way earlier in the morning because you're there with them getting ready, and then through first look usually. So walk us through like how you guide your couples through planning all of that.
So I start with coffee in the morning. No, I'm just joking. So I always like that consultation, that faux timeline that I create with them. I always tell them you start at whenever you want your ceremony to be. So I always tell people start at sunset and then, you know, work backwards. So at sunset, you're going to go ahead and have that hour and a half of ceremony / portrait time. And then from there, you can go ahead and set up your getting ready area of the timeline. And I don't know in regards to how long the makeup will take and everything like that, but I always tell couples, let me come in just as makeup is being finished on you. Not your bridesmaids or your mom or mother-in-law, but on you, because the last thing that you want is me to photograph you without makeup. Like, I want to make sure that I get you at your best. And then after that, everything else kind of like falls into place. Reception, and I always try to work with a wedding planner or a coordinator just because they have a little bit more of an overhead view on everything and the logistics of all the wedding vendors that are there. But if it's just, you know, us, then I always say, you know, look at your reception, and your reception, that's where you have a little bit more flexibility. Once the food is out, the food is out. And then you have your 3, 4, 5, 6, however long you want to party, hours of time where you can go ahead and do whatever you missed out on pre-ceremony, whether it's portraits or things like that. So that's my advice in regards to trying to figure out the timeline. But what Lori said is on point. Like, kudos. That is actually like, you have to look at where everybody's at. I've had that happen before. Like where somebody's like, well, you know, we want you to stay an extra 2 hours, like a few days before the wedding day. And I'm just like, okay, all right, let's figure it out. So it's always interesting. So what Lori said is on point. I second that.
So do you recommend a first look to most of your couples?
I think that's more you.
That's going to be a Rudy question.
You want me to be 100% honest? Yes. 100% yes. I'm Catholic. I grew up very, in a traditional conservative home. But for me, like, I'm like, yes, have a first look, because it's the tradition to me, for me personally. For everybody else, it's different. But for me, it's no longer needed in the wedding industry. And in Europe, whenever we photograph weddings in Europe, the couple, they actually see each other at the end of the aisle and they walk down together. So it's completely different than it is here in America. And I always think of of that whenever I talk to couples about a first look. I'm just like, hey, like everybody else in the world, it's completely different. And your wedding is your wedding. You decide how you want it to be. But I recommend a first look because it saves time. It gets rid of the butterflies. It gets rid of so much stress. Like I've had couples say that they didn't want a first look and change last minute, like 30 minutes before the wedding ceremony. They're just like, I need to see them. I need to see them. And it just helps so much.
Yeah. Plus, I did a first look, so I don't know what the alternative is if you don't, but I imagine you get way more pictures of you and your spouse than you would if you did it the other way and try and squeeze it all into cocktail hour. And then maybe you get some nighttime shots, but at that point, you're kind of missing parts of your reception. So I think if you're trying to maximize on photos of like you and your spouse, I agree that first look is definitely the way to go. So at a venue like Casa Feliz, this is maybe more talking to Lori, but how does the timeline change? Run us through what is the dinner reception set up at Casa Feliz?
Yeah, so I think one specific thing is the music does have to stay inside with Casa Feliz. Being in a residential neighborhood in Winter Park, we try to be as respectful as possible to the neighbors. So we do keep the speakers and the music inside. So we do try to help our couples with that. So they have ceremony first, which is usually on the front side of the house, but everyone thinks it's the back. And then they'll go to cocktail hour. And then we flow them into the side of the house so that they're not walking through reception area quite yet. Yeah. And then in that middle area, which is like the big living room, they'll do that first introduction, first dance, parent dances, toast. We also sometimes suggest inside if they want to use the mic, because that's another reason as well, depending on how vocal they might be. Yeah. And then flow them right into dinner, which is the door right next to the dance floor. So we kind of keep that in line so that everyone's moving, seeing something different too, because Casa has so many nooks and crannies of things to look at that are beautiful. So it kind of keeps them looking at each area in a different way at a different time.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't, and you actually can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't do music typically for cocktail hour or dinner time. Our speakers are inside. So if your guests are going in and out, they're hearing it from inside, but we won't put speakers outside. So that's definitely something to think about when you're thinking of that timeline. It is a little different at Casa because you kind of get all the formalities out of the way. That way you can get to the dancing.
Right. Which most people prefer to kind of, like he was saying, so people get the butterflies to do the first look. Same thing with those first dances and stuff. They sometimes want to get them out of the way. Yeah. But we keep one of the doors open so the noise can travel outside still. It'll be background music, which is what you want for dinner anyways. You don't want it to be super loud because everyone's talking. But that way you're kind of still getting that little bit of music in the background, but we wouldn't be putting the speakers directly outside.
Yep. Awesome. So we love Casa Feliz as a venue. What do you think are the top 3 reasons, or top reasons? You don't have to do 3 if you don't want to. I think I just sprung that number in there. That a couple will book at Casa Feliz.
Yeah, I mean, the pictures, I'm sure Rudy can attest to this. The house cannot take a bad picture. Like, it's ridiculous. I wish I was as photogenic as the house. But those bricks and blues are just a beautiful backdrop and background. So for couples, it's nice too. This is kind of like reason number 2, I guess you could say. They don't have to worry quite as much for their budget when it comes to decor, draping, things like that, that you might add on to a space that doesn't quite have as much in it already. So that's something to always consider as a couple. And then, of course, Arthur's being there. I honestly think of that as an added bonus because you know your food is taken care of and going to be amazing. I have guests come up to me all the time that are like, this is not wedding food.
You're like, this is amazing.
Yeah. And I'm like, thank you. I understand. So awesome. I would say those are my top 3.
Those are a good top 3. I think you hit like the nail on the head with Casa really doesn't need, I mean, we can add market lighting, we can add up lighting, and then like your plates are gorgeous, and then you're like set. It's its own, vision and perfectly coordinated wedding day. Like, it really doesn't need that much.
It's so beautiful. I mean, of course, the couple, if they want to add to their tent, draping and lighting, like you said, things like that. You can always accentuate the beauty. You don't have to worry about making it.
Yeah. I love that. And Rudy, you've obviously been all over Orlando, and not just Orlando, but all over all kinds of venues. What should a couple look for when they're picking a venue? That way they can make sure their photos look amazing every time.
So I was actually talking to Marta about this because I was like, man, this is like such an interesting question. For me, the first thing that came to mind was you want to make sure that the venue that you choose is something that you truly love. And I say this because people that love you will go wherever you go to celebrate your love together. It doesn't matter if it's down the street, 500 miles away. It doesn't matter. If they love you, they will be there. So choose a venue that you will love. A photographer should be able to take photos no matter what situation is thrown to them. Now, taking that into account, you should also consider the type of imagery that you like. So if you like something that's light and airy, or something that's a little bit more dark and a little bit more moody, you want to take into account the location of where you're getting married to complement that style as well. Because if you're in a ballroom in a hotel, that's not a place where you would get light and airy photos. That's something where you would get something that's more like off-camera flash, or something that's a little bit more with artificial light. And then at the same time, you also want to look at where you're going to be getting ready. I know that the Casa Feliz, for example, like their bridal room has so much natural light that comes in that it complements whatever look you're trying to go for. And from there, you want to go ahead and make sure that whatever aesthetic you're trying to go for just all blends well. So do your research a little bit, try to find a photographer that fits that style, but also find a venue that fits that style. If you're not sure about which venue you want to go for, I suggest weddingvenuemap.com. That's honestly a phenomenal local research, website to do your research in order to find a venue that you're not 100% sure about. So, and you can filter out with, whatever, but it's awesomeness more than anything else. I hope that all makes sense.
Yes, no, that's all great advice. 100% agreed. Definitely check out Wedding Venue Map. And I think once you pick your venue, all your other vendors kind of come into place. You can check on, what vendors frequent that venue. It all kind of starts there. The whole vision. I remember picking out my venue was really hard. And I was like, are you going to paint this wall? You can't paint this wall in the next year. Like, I love the color of this wall. Don't paint the wall. All these little things, like, if they're at the end of the day after the wedding, all you have left are your photos. I do happen to think a DJ is a very important vendor at your wedding day, but we all know that the photographer is really where it's at. So, and the venue sets the stage. So thank you guys for giving our couples insight. We do have a few questions in the comments, but I think we should just go through and kind of comment back to them and answer their questions on Facebook. And anything else that you guys want to share with your couples, with your audience?
Thanks for having us. And we love our DJ Rocks, of course, actually one of the exclusive on our list at Casa. So we love working with you guys and just couples in general. Feel free to reach out to your vendors. We're here for you. We are happy to help. And if you have any questions, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Actually, can you tell them where they can find each of you guys? Websites, Instagrams, wherever you want them to connect with you. Lori, you can go first.
Yeah. Casa Felice's Instagram is Casa Felice Venue. Or you, of course, can go to arthurscatering.com. And we have a whole venue list on there, too.
Awesome. What about you, Rudy? How can they reach you?
We are everywhere. So at Rudy and Marta, everywhere. We're Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can find me there too. So anywhere and everywhere at Rudy and Marta.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're so grateful for your partnership in creating amazing moments for all of our couples at every wedding that we have worked with you guys. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in, and we will see you next Monday for another episode of In the Mix. And I hope you all have a great night.
Bye.